So hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial I intend to show you how to create a fixed asset register. We have softwares that do fixed assets management, and they do exactly what we're about to do here. But if you're a small business or you're medium scale business and even some large enterprises, understanding fixed assets registers and your ability to create them in Excel would help you a lot, especially when you want to reconcile with whatever you get from the ERP. So let's get started with the fixed asset register. So here I have got some asset class here. It could be more than this, but this is just for the demonstration. And we are going to get values for our gross block, and we get values for our accumulated depreciation, and we get values for our net book value. So I have three different assets here, sample assets here with their values and their classes here. So what we want to do is to sort of mirror what we do when we do fixed assets management with regards to the net book value. So depending on the policy in your company, you could have a salvage value. Here we will just assume a salvage value of 10. And if we want it to be continuous, we just say equal to 10 so that it rolls down. Just to inform you, what I'm using here is it's an Excel formatted table. The reason why I'm using it is because I want it to cascade down. This I'm using Excel 2016. So with an Excel table, the formulas cascade down and then give you what you have here. So value to be depreciated, it's actually equal to whatever we have as C15. That's your asset value less what your salvage value is. So that would be this. So that will be this 2 that we have here. All right. So so that closes that and it runs down. So this is what we'll be using for our depreciation. Okay. So here we look at the useful life. So the useful life here, we can assume a 5 here, a 3 here, and we can assume a 5 here. Okay. So you could assume anything, but just have that there. So we move further and look at our useful life in months. So here it's our useful life in years, but here is our useful life in months. So it's going to be anything from the 5 years. I love using a G15 so that we can see what we're doing. G15 times 12. And so that would be, so this asset has a useful life of 60 months, 36 months, and then 60 months here. It could be anything based on the useful life in years. Okay, so in developing the fixed asset register, it's required that you state a date where depreciation starts. You see, so we're going to have different dates here. For example, we say that this starts from 1st of January 2020. Okay, and let's assume that this starts from 1st of December 2019, and this starts from 1st of February 2020. Okay, so we have this date, that's that date. So when will be the end date? When would it end? So that's what we have here. So what we can do here is use a function like the e-date, which is like end date. So the e-date, it tells us what is the start date. So we already know the start date, and that's I-15 here. So that's the start date, and it's asking us the number of months. So we are going to use the we're going to use the useful life months in this. And so that's going to be H15 here. So that gives us that. So this is where it ends. This is the start date, okay? And then we have useful life in days. So to get the useful life in days is quite easy. It's simply read the end date minus the start date. So it's going to be J15. Am I correct? Yes. And we're going to subtract it from I15. Is that correct? Yes, it is. And then that's where we go. So this is the total number of days, or useful life in days that we have here. Now, this is quite important because of what we will be calculating further. So here, if you notice, while we were here, we had a report date here. I already have a report date. It could be any other date. So if you have a report date here, all you need to do for your report date here is to just look at that date. So we're going to look at this date. It's going to be equal to this, and we're going to lock it. So we lock it there, and then that's our report date. Because we will be comparing this report date with our start date in order to determine how many days has elapsed for this asset. Okay, so we come to asset disposal date. We're going to come back to asset disposal date here, because sometimes you have an asset you've acquired, and you have its end date, but just before its end date you dispose the asset. You get it? So we're going to make this fixed asset register one that incorporates the asset disposal date. Okay, so we just go to depreciation per day. So depreciation per day, it's now easy to solve, because our depreciation per day would be taking the value that we're going to depreciate, which is F15 here. And what we're going to do is we're going to divide it by the useful life in days, and that is K15. Okay, so here we are. So this is every day that elapses, the asset loses this value. Every day that elapses, it loses this value. All right, so we're going to determine, okay, how many days has elapsed since the asset was bought. So the number of days that have elapsed is going to be the report date, and that is L15. That's the report date, and we're going to subtract it from the start date, which is I15. Okay, so that's it. And so you can see what's happening here. So I want you to notice what is happening here. For example, here the report date is coming, it's earlier than the start date, so that's why we have a negative here. But in all of the two above here, we see that the report date is coming after the start date here. You see that? So also another thing you want to notice here is that we are interested in depreciation, accumulated depreciation, as at the report date. So here again, what we're going to do is going to just add a day to this so that it will be inclusive of the report date. So we're going to have a +1 here. And so that makes it this, okay? So gives us +1 here. Let me make this one 2nd of February. I want you to see how I handle that minus. So yes, so I want this to be here. So what we want here are positive numbers and not negative numbers. So how do we handle that? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a max function. So it's a max function, and I'm going to tell this formula that give me the maximum of this and 0. So once we do that, it eliminates any negative that comes in. If at all you have registered an asset and the start date is still ahead, Yes, you can do it with this model, and if the report date is earlier than the start date, you're going to have a 0 because of this formula. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to find out the depreciation value. So that's easy now. 015 multiplied by the depreciation per day, which is N15. So that gives us this. And so here you can see what depreciation is as at the report date. Okay, so we're going to go further and determine what this will be. And that, again, it's easy because we're going to be looking at the value we're depreciating, which is F15. So we're going to have F15, and we're going to take out the accumulated depreciation, which is P15. Okay, so that's what we get, and that is what it is here. So at this point, I really don't want this value to show here because its start date is still ahead. It's an asset. Yes, we have it, but it could be in work in progress. So it shouldn't show here at all. So I'm going to make these values dependable. So this formula will depend on the depreciation value. So what we're going to do here is simply use an if function to say that if P15 is equal to 0, then give me 0, else you should give me this value here. Okay, so you can see that I've succeeded in eliminating that, so that should not count until the start date. Until the start date or after the start date, then this one can come up. Okay, so that takes care of all of that. Now let's come back to the disposal of assets. Okay, so let's assume that this asset was actually bought in 2019. So if it was bought in 2019, you can see that the accumulated depreciation has increased here and then giving us the net book value. So it was bought in 2019 and it's expected to end in 2024. But what is happening here is that let's assume that we sold it on the 31st of March 2020. So it was bought, it started in January, it has spent some time with us, and we had to dispose it at so date. So the question we'll be asking ourselves is that if the report date, because we have a report date here, the report date here is 31st of January, and 31st of January we can, in order to give us the real problem here, we're going to have this as let's see if it will work for this. So I want to change it so that it reflects something that we are interested to see. So this is June 2020, and we had sold it in March. So as of June, we shouldn't be reporting anything about it at all. But here you see that it's coming up here. So what we need to do is to put conditions in place so that this value here would be 0. Why? Because the report date is greater than the asset disposal date. So report date is greater than the disposal date. Once that happens, we want this to be 0. So what we can do, and I just want you to see this, to see what happens if we do that, is that we could have come here and say that if M15 is not equal to 0, it should just give us a 0, else it should give us this. Okay, and then we hit it. Sorry, I must have done something wrong there. If it's not, this is not equal to 0, give me 0. Yes, so that's where we had the. Okay, let me just check it. All right, so that should work now. Okay, so you can see here that when this is 0, when we have a value here, it doesn't calculate anything here. It doesn't give us any values at all here. And so, but for all others, it gives us values that we can use. If we take this out, now, you see that we get values for it. And if it comes back in, we see that we have this value here. Okay, so that takes care of it, except for this one. So this one looks this is ugly here. So one thing we can do is add another level of condition here, and the condition we're going to add is if this one, if the elapsed days, the depreciation days this time, because we no longer use it because of that. So we're going to come here, and if N15 is equal to 0, then just give us 0 here, else you should give us this other value. So that seals it, and we're done. So like you can see, because we have done this, this happens. Okay, but still we may have another problem, and that problem is this. It may occur to us that while this is the report date, we might have a disposal value, or sometimes we want to look back and we want to say, oh, this report date should be sometimes 1st of January 2020, I think. Give us, I want to show you a condition that could come up. Okay, so you can see that on the 31st is when this disposal happened, but 1st of January this disposal had not happened, had not taken place. So it would be nice if our formula recognizes that, look, we're looking back to see what happened in the past, and we still want to see these values if the disposal date is greater than the report date. So that's the condition we had brought out here. So we need to bring that into our equation to make everything okay. So we'll come in here, and instead of just this one condition, we need to make this condition 2 conditions. And to do that, we need the AND function. So we need the AND function, and what we're going to do, we're going to build 2 conditions within the bracket. There's the AND, and then we need 2 conditions within this bracket. So the other condition will be a situation where the report date, so if it happens that the report date is less than this other date, sorry, we need to put it the other way around. It should be greater than. If it happens that way, then we should have, let's check it out. So exactly that's what we get here. You can see here. So because it is like this, we get it here. But sooner we say, oh, sorry, this report date, let's go to the report date, that this report date is in June. So if we have it that way, you can see what happens now. So we have nothing showing here while all others are showing. So this is exactly how you can create a fixed asset register like we have here. So what would now be our gross block? So our gross block would simply be the total value in this asset column. but we want to make sure that it agrees with every other value that is here. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a kind of lookup to look up this. And so I'm going to be using my index. I want an index of all of this, okay? And then I want it to match with, this value, looking at these range here, looking at this array here, so 0, and then we close it. Okay, so okay, so that's it. We have this, and so we have no vehicles here, so we can easily close this with an if error. If there is an error, just give us 0 value, and so we can copy this down. Okay, so that's fine. So we can sum all of this and select them. So that should give us the total value. The total value here, which is this. So that's correct. So we're going to do same for all of this. So I'm going to just copy this and bring it here. Here it is. So that tells me it's doing the right thing. But this time around, I want it to look at the accumulated depreciation. That's depreciation value here. So what I'm going to do is my lookup here will become, I'm going to just, and what Excel does for me is that it brings up all of this. So I'm going to just double click here and then hit my enter button and then down. So this is what it gives us. So we can copy this, and that's what we have. It's fine. So we just do the same thing for the last one here, and then hit enter button, and so we net book value. So we're going to come here, and this would now be net book value. Okay, take it out, and these are happening because we're using an Excel table. So we're going to just this in and down, and that's what we have. So like we did previously, if this was in January, you see everything comes out and we see what our values are, and then you can use this to go and do any adjustments in your accounting books. So I hope you learned a lot from this tutorial. We've used a series of Excel functions, and you can understand how they work. We've used the if error, the index, we've used the match. That's 3 functions there, and then we have used the eDate. That's the 4th function, and then we have used the AND. That's the 5th function. We've used the if. That's the 6th function that we have used in this example. So 6 Excel functions. You can see how you can bring all of these 6 functions to create your fixed asset register. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from this. If you did, please continue with the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye bye.